Today I'm going to talk about the LEDs that I use on my layout. In previous videos I've shown you me wiring up separate LEDs like these small ones here, but at the moment, with Christmas almost being here, there are lots of LEDs you can get in the shops. So I thought I would just take a look at some of the LEDs that I use. So I've got these small 3.2mm LEDs. These are diffused cold white LEDs, and they're quite nice. They're very blue in colour when you look at them, and so they do tend to look a bit more modern and a bit more artificial. I've also got some 5mm LEDs. Again, these are used hidden away, and the flickering LED that I used was a 5mm LED. Some of the other ways I get LEDs is I salvage them from things that I've broken. So this is one that's come out of something, and it has fairly long leads on it still, so we should be able to get it to work. It looks like that's a Duff LED, so we can discard that one. Other ways I order LEDs is on these strips. These are extremely small, and the soldering pads are very difficult to get to. If you're not confident to solder, then these ones are not for you. These are very cheap on eBay. I think these are 32 by 24, and that's millimeters. I also have some in this 50/50 package, which is 5mm by 5mm. These are RGB addressable LEDs, which I'm using for a different project, but it just shows a different package you can get LEDs in. And then there are the two more common types of LEDs that you can get from the likes of Poundland, Poundstretcher, Tesco have them, Asda have them, all at various prices, but you normally get about 20 lights in the sets that are usable for modelling. So much like some of my previous videos where I've used the enamelled wire, you get the enamelled wire versions, and I'll just pop these ones on. So again, we've got cold white, and they're very handy. I've seen people use these directly in the string, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you how to use these as individual LEDs, as if you had bought one of these LEDs, but remembering you get 20 for your pound. And this is another package which has a 3.5mm LED on them. These are side emitting LEDs, so they're good for using things where you want the side to light up, which is good. And again, these ones are older ones, so they don't work. But again, the point of this video is I'm going to show you how we can get these to, although they don't work in the string anymore, we can use them. And this is a brand new set from Poundland for this year, and these other sets are from previous years. So again, we just pop the battery in, and again we've got cold white side emitting LEDs. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to show you what I do to get these to be useful on my layout. And it's not quite as drastic as you might think it would be. So we'll put some of these out of the way just now. And of course we'll look at this set first. So we'll just pop them on. And pop a cover on there. So the wire on these ones is the enamelled wire, which I've shown in a previous video how to use the enamelled wire to do things. And what we want to do is to be able to use these LEDs in our layout, is we want to be able to use as much of the LED as we can. On these ones where we've got the legs, we solder onto the legs. On these LEDs are actually very similar to these ones. They're just in a blob of resin. So we don't have any leads on these. The soldering pads are just very, very small on the sides. So what I do is I just simply snip them off. I don't normally do it while they're on, I just did that to show you that I'm not hurting the rest of the string. So if you just needed one LED to start with and you had a string of Christmas lights, you could just take one off and there we go. So again, very, very similar to the tutorial I did with the enamelled wire. What we want to do is we actually want to burn off the coating that is on the enamelled wire. So it's just a case of going to the end and burning it off with the soldering iron. You will see it bubble, and that's what we want. That's the coating, and then you'll see that it's very difficult on these ones because the wire is silver, whereas with the normal enamelled wire, is a golden copper colour. So what we want to do is we just want to get either end off. Just blow away some of the smoke, stop it coming into my face. And there we go. So this wire is fully insulated now apart from the end, and we can run it directly just like the normal LED straight from a 3-volt battery. So now all that we need to do is we now know which is positive and which is negative. I was lucky I got that first time. I'm using a small 3-volt battery, which is less likely to damage the LED while it's there, and we always know what our plus is. So you just put the battery either way around until it works, and then you know which is your positive and which is your negative. So I know that this one is now the positive. Double check that, yeah. So I tend to bend the positives. And I quite simply get a piece of paper, tin that up, and then solder it on. And then the same for the negative. Now you could do this once you've got it in place. You can use a marker to mark which is which way around, and then use the enamelled wire to bring it out. You know, if you're creating a building, it's nice to have the enamelled wire behind the walls, or if you're creating a sign, the enamelled wire is, you can bend it and it stays in the shape that you want. So it's quite handy to use the enamelled wire, whereas this wire is a bit more, it flexes and bends. And again, what we'll do is we'll just check that the LED now still works once we've now that we've put the additional wire on. So there we go. We now have an LED ready to be used on our layout. So that's those ones. They're all in parallel, so you can just cut them off. And the best bet is to go to the end of the string and then cut just before the second last LED every time, and then you get the same amount of wire, and you've always got wire right down to the end. As you can see that it's shorter on this, but then you can just use the actual wire that it's connected to. So now this is the set of LEDs that wasn't working, and we'll just prove that again. As you can see, they don't work. So I've had these for a while, and I can see in this that there's a bit of corrosion on that LED there. So I expect it's that one that's not working, or that there's something in the circuit that's making it not work. So again, with these ones, we've got the wire. Some of them have little dots along the positive and negative, but again, we just cut it off at the point of the second last LED. And again with the strippers, the wire that they use on these is very, very thin, so you do have to be aware of that. So again, I can test this particular LED, doesn't work that way around, but it works that way around. So out of a non-working set, I now know that I have a working LED. So that's salvaging. So our pound was used for decoration last year or the year before, and then now I've got an LED which I can use on my layout. And again, these are 3-volt LEDs, so if you're putting them onto your DCC wiring, make sure you've got a couple of resistors on there just to work. And that's the same for these new ones as well. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with all these LEDs yet. I have a lot of LEDs here and a fairly small layout, so I should have enough LEDs from these. The good thing about being able to go to somewhere local and get them is we know that what we're getting because we're buying it in a package. If you're buying stuff from eBay, you don't know the quality. So the next thing I'm going to show you is just how small these LED soldering pads are, and how difficult that they are to get. So you might be able to see on either side of this you have your 2 soldering pads, and that is all the space that you have to solder with. So with these ones, what I do is I have a soldering block, which is a piece of wood, which I use to solder, and it protects my mat. And because these are so small, it's sometimes difficult to see which is positive and which is negative. And the easiest way to then test that is to use the leads on your meter. So I can go that way around, and I can go that way around, and as you can see, this is a small warm white LED. Again, it's 3 volts. This doesn't give out 3 volts. To test, it gives out slightly less because it's just using the internal battery. So again, I need my positive and negative wires. We want to strip these. I tend to strip very, very little from the end, especially when I'm going onto something like this. So as you can see, we've got our positive and our negative. And I know that this side is positive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very carefully, without flipping it over, is I'm going to turn it upside down. And the light that I have just catches the sides of the LEDs. So to start with, I tin my wires, which, because of the heat that comes off the soldering iron, it also strips the wire back slightly, it shrinks away. And this LED is so delicate, we just want to touch. And then let the LED completely cool before you do the next. Solder. Because they do get destroyed if they get too hot. And again, I just try and touch. Now you've got to remember that solder's not the strongest, so you might want to put a blob of, I use silicone on the backs of the LEDs, just general bathroom silicone, just a blob just to cover it and try and hold them on. And again, to test the LED now, all I do is get my trusted coin cell, which now lights up a nice warm white from that LED. These little 5mm LEDs that I've got, these are RGB LEDs. These need slightly different wiring. They have an arrow on them because they require a data pin. So you've got your standard black and your red, or whatever colours you want to use. I use black and red for plus and minus, and then I've got this green one here, which is my digital output. That means I can tell what this LED should be. These LEDs all have to be in a parallel array, so the digital has to go all the way through, and it's not really a good LED to be using in a layout at the moment, because you need to say to each LED what colour they need to be, and the wiring for these is not the greatest for being under a layout, because obviously you've got to have the 3 wires going the whole way along. These are actually 5V LEDs, and they need a 5V supply because they have a little chip built in, which is a 5V chip, and the resistors that are on board either side do all of the current regulation and get the LEDs the right voltage. So if you are going for the 5mm LEDs, you can get them in red, green, blue, cold white, red, green, blue, warm white, or similarly to this chip. You can get this chip in various sizes, from 1.5mm by 1.5mm all the way up to the 5.5mm to 5mm. So if you are going for, you can get warm whites in these, but just remember these chips are quite big. Looking at scale, 3mm being to the foot, you're looking at an LED size being over a foot. So a foot, nearly 2 foot by 2 foot. So that's a big LED, whereas these ones, this is probably the smallest I would go, because of the soldering that is required for these. I hope you enjoyed that video and a little tour through the LEDs that I use and how to get LEDs. They are obviously at this moment in time, end of November, beginning of December, very easy to come by. And even if you've got an old set of Christmas lights, especially definitely LED ones, if you look in the heat shrink, make sure there's no resistor there. Then it's a 3V LED. And if you're not sure if you've got a set of LEDs which isn't working, and you've got, there's 2 wires to them. Cut one off the end and see if it works on 3 volts. They don't all work on 3 volts. Some of them are in series and they are slightly higher voltages. Some do have resistors which are tacked on along the string at various points, so they need more voltage. But if you are using a single LED, generally they're going to be about 3 volts each. So as I say, I hope you enjoyed that little tour through my LEDs and the LEDs that I use. If you've got any comments or questions, please put them below, and hit the thumbs up if you liked the video. Thanks a lot.